So now, finally, it begins. You are about to write chapter 1 of your novel. I hope you're as excited to write your chapters as I am to read them. Before you start, you need to make some basic decisions regarding point of view and tense. Now, most novels are written in third-person past tense. For example, she looked out at the Las Vegas night, so bright it was almost like day. She was standing close to the railing, which seemed too low to be safe. Or you could write in first-person past tense. I looked out at the Las Vegas night, so bright it was almost like day. I was standing close to the railing, which seemed too low to be safe. Now, the first example, third person, is the most common style, and it allows you the luxury of changing locations and characters at any time, and telling parallel stories which may or may not merge. In the second example, you have the disadvantage of being more or less locked into a single point of view and a single storyline, but it gives you easier access to the thoughts and feelings of the protagonist. Screenplays are always written in present tense, third person. Thus, the same line from a film script would read like this. She looks out at the Las Vegas night, so bright it's almost like day. She's standing close to the railing, which seems too low to be safe. But it's rare that an author chooses to write a novel in present tense, like a screenplay, and it can be a risky choice. Now, personally, I choose a possibly even more risky path and write in first-person present tense. But I'm influenced by the many film and television scripts I've written, and I find it easier. If I were to write the bit from the example, it would read like this. I'm looking out at the Vegas night. So bright it seems like day to me. I'm standing a bit too close to the railing, which looks too low to be safe. So, just make a decision on what style would best suit your story. I'd recommend third-person past tense because it's the most popular and least challenging, but the choice is up to you. So just a few more conventions to talk about before you start. You can make your paragraphs as long as you like, but I prefer to have a paragraph contain a single thought or action or sequence. Long paragraphs combining a lot of elements are more difficult to read and it's easier to lose your place. But this is a personal choice. However, each line of dialogue must be contained in its own paragraph. If it's a conversation, each response needs a new paragraph. So, if you have a conversation with each character having several lines, you might easily have 14 or 15 short paragraphs in a row. The dialogue paragraph might also contain some non-dialogue description. For example, I'm here, she whispered. He was taken by surprise. He did his best to look cool and spoke quietly. I can see that. Never, she said, shaking her head. You never seem happy to see me. Always, he said. What? I'm always happy to see you. She looked at him for a moment, then spoke softly. I'm pregnant. So in this example, you can see several conventions. Dialogue is always in quotation marks. A statement of dialogue ends in a comma if it is followed by an identifier. I'm here, comma, she said. If a descriptor identifier precedes dialogue, it must end in a comma. He spoke quietly, comma, I can see that. You don't always need an identifier, he said, she said. In fact, I would suggest only using a descriptor if it's not clear who's speaking. By the way, every paragraph should start with a one-tab indentation. So every time you begin a paragraph, hit the tab key first. Now, I'm not a big fan of a lot of story structure theories and analyses, but I do live by one rule of structure. Everything must have a beginning, middle, and end. It's simply unavoidable. The beginning is undoubtedly the beginning. The end is definitely the end. And what happens in between is unquestionably the middle. So, your first chapter is the beginning of the beginning and carries the responsibility of introducing your readers to your story in such a way that you must plant an inescapable sense of intrigue that can't be ignored. So this chapter is very important. If you fail to capture your audience, they may not give chapter 2 a chance. So don't hold back. Give it your best. Like your story with its unquestionable beginning, middle, and end, So also does your chapter, and all other chapters have their own three-part structure. The beginning must be captivating, the middle engaging, and the end must leave the reader absolutely no choice but to turn the page and begin chapter 2. But be aware that this is a first draft, and the object is to get through it and write approximately 2,500 words. 10 pages, double-spaced. So don't spend a lot of time trying to outdo A Tale of Two Cities for the greatest opening lines ever. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Because you probably won't get there, and you need to finish. So let's get started. I recommend pacing yourself by setting a daily quota of words. You may be able to write the whole thing in 1 or 2 sittings, but it might not be the best idea. Try setting a quota of just 500 words a day. Each day, take some time to read everything you've written so far and revise a bit before moving on to the next 500 words. This will get your first chapter completed in just 5 days. You might want to up the quota a bit, but don't go too high. Remember, you are writing a novel, not an essay or a test paper. So you really need to pace yourself. It's a marathon. But if you keep at it and achieve your daily word count, you will complete your novel. Submit your first chapter for review. Remember to include your logline and review the chapters of 5 of your peers. Be kind, be generous, be helpful. Then revise your work with the helpful feedback you've received.